Breaking tonight, campaign controversy after one of the most powerful media outlets in the land attacks a candidate's young children. Welcome to the Kelly File. I'm Sandra Smith in for Megyn Kelly tonight. Well, it all started with a lighthearted political ad starring Ted Cruz and his family. In it, the Cruzes spoofed some made-up Christmas classics. Watch.
The whole family will enjoy reading stories like The Grinch, who lost her emails.
I know just what I'll do, she said with a snicker. I'll use my own server, and no one will be the wiser.
And if you act now, we'll throw in the inspiring new Christmas story, soon to be an instant classic.
Please read this one, Daddy.
Okay.
The Senator Who Saved Christmas.
Oh, this is a good one.
But just a few days later, a Washington Post political cartoonist accused Cruz of using his 5- and 7-year-old daughters as political props and went so far as to portray the presidential candidate in a Santa outfit with an organ grinder and little Catherine and Caroline Cruz as monkeys. Outrage ensued, and within hours, the image was taken off of the Washington Post's website. But cartoonist Ann Telnaas is not apologizing, taking to Twitter, arguing the little girls are fair game because Cruz put his children in the ad, something many politicians on both sides of the aisle do. The paper's editorial page editor had a different take, saying, quote, "It's generally been the policy of our editorial section to leave children out of it. I failed to look at this cartoon before it was published. I understand why Ann thought an exception to the policy was warranted in this case, but I do not agree." Meanwhile, Senator Cruz hit back on Twitter and on the campaign trail.
You know, I have to admit, yesterday when I saw that cartoon, not much ticks me off. But making fun of my girls, that'll do it. All of us learned in kindergarten, don't hit little girls. It's not complicated. Don't make fun of a 5-year-old girl and a 7-year-old girl. Listen, everyone expects the mainstream media to be liberal, to be biased. Folks want to attack me, knock yourself out. That's part of the process. I signed up for that. That's fine. But my girls didn't sign up for that.
Several of his fellow candidates also agreed with him, suggesting the paper was way out of line. In the hours since, the Cruz campaign has started fundraising off that cartoon, saying the liberal media is desperate to destroy him and his family. As for the Post, well, it's now suggesting this was all a gift to Cruz because, in part, it boosts his argument that the media doesn't treat him or conservatives fairly. Joining us now, Chris Stirewalt, our Fox News digital politics editor, and Howard Kurtz, host of Fox News Media Buzz. Chris, I got to start with you first on this. Is there anything okay about this political cartoonist using a presidential candidate's children?
Well, I'd have sure like to see what would have happened if they'd have done that with the Obama girls. I don't think that washed. And when you wonder about double standards and you wonder about how life is different for Republican candidates than it is for Democratic candidates, here you have one of the first top-tier, one of the two first top-tier Hispanic candidates running for president ever. For a major party. The guy's running, and his daughters are portrayed as monkeys by the Washington Post. How would that have worked if this had been Barack Obama in 2007? I think the outrage would have been much, much louder because it would have been right in both cases. No matter what Ted Cruz does with his daughters in an ad, they're his daggone daughters, and he can do it, and there is no space for anybody in any news outlet to use them for their purposes.
Well, Howie, we know what happens if it's the Obama daughters, because that did happen. In the case of the turkey pardon, a GOP staffer criticized their appearance and their behavior at a turkey pardon. That GOP staffer was then fired. What should happen to this Washington Post editor? You're saying he should apologize. Should he be fired? He says he failed to look at it before it was published.
Well, look, no editor can look at every piece of content before it's posted online, but this is an utter embarrassment to the Washington Post. And the gall of that Washington Post columnist to say, well, my news organization just slimed Ted Cruz. But this is actually a political gift to the senator. Cruz advisor Rick Tyler telling me, yes, we're raising money on this, but not nearly enough to cover the damage. And the damage, of course, is the human element here. This is a dad with 2 little girls, and they've been portrayed as animals. So on what, this is not some gray area, gee, maybe the paper went too far. This is an outrage, and the muted media explosion, Chris is right, had this involved Sasha and Malia or Chelsea Clinton, it would have been a nuclear explosion.
Well, we do know that Ted Cruz, Chris, is he's raising campaign funds on this. We actually have the fundraising email that was sent out. He said, "I'm sickened by this. I knew I'd be facing attacks from day one of my campaign, but he said I had never expected anything like this." Anyway, he said, "This is an emergency. All hands on deck. Click here to make an instant emergency contribution and help me fight back." So is this a good tactic for him to turn around and use it to raise money?
Very often conservatives don't know who they are going to be interested in supporting until they find out who the press hates the most. And in the case of a Republican primary race, having the Washington Post, and by the way, every news outlet treats Ted Cruz as if he is some sort of troglodyte, and they can't believe it very often. That Ted Cruz, like, how do they like this guy? He's so conservative. He's so polarizing. Why this guy? And they keep coming after him. What they don't understand is everything that they do that they think is hurting Ted Cruz is hardening, is annealing the conservative base around him, the way it's done for Sarah Palin, the way it's done for Donald Trump, the way it's done for other figures. The conservatives say, wait a minute, if they're coming after him, this guy must be doing something right.
Well, Howie, we have a moment that perhaps we should remind the audience, the moment you shared with Megyn back in April, the media running after Hillary's Scooby van and the attention. As we discussed the double standard, take a look.
Howie, I'm sorry, but when I see those reporters chasing after their subject, who remain so elusive, who despite their best efforts, they cannot seem to pin down, the reporters there reminded me of the reporters here. Remember this? The police. They look like the police. Look at the police. The police did their best to try to capture an elusive subject, and the reporters did the same. Not comparing the subjects to one another. I want to underscore that.
Howie, we had to.
You had to. Well, look, that was not the media's finest hour. I would point out that other reporting on Hillary Clinton has pointed out, for example, the fiasco of her private email server. And I got to disagree with Chris a little bit. I don't think every single reporter at every single news organization is biased against Ted Cruz. But the New York Times recently, now his senator is surging the polls, a clear #2 to Donald Trump. You know, this whole piece on how unlikable he is, and he's trying to get likable, but little kids don't like him. So when a Pulitzer Prize-winning cartoonist like Ann Telnaise does this, portraying the kids as animals, and then is sort of tone deaf, at least could go online or make a statement and saying, gee, maybe I went too far, it does fuel the senator's argument that the liberal media are out to get him. It tars everybody in this profession.
Come on, Howie, we just had such a fun moment. I mean, you broke away
I'm
from
getting
it.
too serious.
I mean,
Llama,
Chris, in your note this
van.
morning, you included that as one of the worst media fails of 2015. I mean, can't we just have a laugh for a minute?
Not the llamas. The llamas was a high point. The llamas was one of the best things that happened in 2015, and they were even able to decode it to the point of saying that the black llama was taken into custody first, and what does this mean for the Black Lives Matter movement? It was a rich, nuanced discussion. Twitter, for politics, however, has been worse than it has been for llamas, and not to bring it down, but unfortunately, in the airless crypt that is good sense, good reason, and good judgment in politics, much of that has gone away as reporters have joined in candidates in chasing phony outrage after outrage after outrage after outrage, and frankly, I'm tired. I'm glad the year's over. I need a break.
Chris, I mean, we've got a whole election year coming up, so go get some rest, buddy. I mean, Howie, we got the Iowa caucus 40 days away. Do you expect anything to change in 2016 as we leave it off?
Well, it is just amazing how much this campaign has been distracted by phony controversies, manufactured outrage, and the like. But to me, the much bigger fundamental failure here has been the way in which the entire media establishment, let's face it, missed the rise of Donald Trump, mocked and minimized him, and said he was going to implode any minute, and more important, failed to understand the anger and anxiety in the country that Trump was connecting with, and then the deep distrust of the political establishment and the media establishment. That's not a great laugh line, but it has not been a great year for the Fourth Estate.
All right, well, Chris is tired, so we've got to let him go get some rest. Thanks, guys. Great. And developing tonight, growing outrage out of Virginia, where the state's Democratic Attorney General announced that the Commonwealth will no longer recognize out-of-state concealed handgun permits held by residents of 25 states, a decision made unilaterally without the state legislature. The move will impact more than 6 million legal gun owners when it goes into effect next year. Joining me now, Guy Benson, political editor for townhall.com and a Fox News contributor, and Megyn Kelly, the founder and executive director of the Accountability Project. Welcome to you both.
Hey, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. I'm sure we're going to see a spirited debate from the two of you on this one. Megyn, I'll start out with the anger that we're seeing from the Republicans and supporters of the Second Amendment. Gun rights activist John Whitbeck, chairman of the Virginia Republican Party, said the Attorney General's announcement was further proof that Democrats have declared war on the Second Amendment. Your take?
Listen, I'm here in Arizona right now with my family, and my family, they're all gun owners, they're NRA members, and they said to me, listen, they want stronger gun laws. 75% of NRA members believe that there should be universal background checks, that there should be stronger gun laws on the books. All Virginia is trying to do right now is prevent, they have very safe gun laws on the books in Virginia, as do most states in America. But the states that have the weakest gun laws, they shouldn't allow their citizens to come in and carry, and they don't pass the same rules that the Virginia checks go through. So they're just trying to protect their own citizens. Just like if you smoke weed, if you have a license to a medical marijuana license in Colorado, you can't walk into a state and smoke weed saying, well, I have this medical marijuana license in my state. Why can't I smoke in this other state? State laws matter. And so if you can get a visitor's license.
Guy, and a clear sign that Americans feel that their Second Amendment right is being stripped away from them, and more changes may be coming. This holiday season, I'm on the Fox Business Network all day long, and we have been consistently reporting a spike in gun sales in this country. A lot of people are going to be opening up a gun underneath their Christmas tree.
Yeah, it's not just gun sales, it's also polling on these issues. And look, I'm actually a Virginia resident. I vote in the state of Virginia. And what's fascinating is we just had an election, Sandra, in my state, and the Democrats in Northern Virginia campaigned on strict gun control laws to try to beef up gun control. And guess what? They lost. They failed to regain the state Senate despite this entire push that they put together. And so now that they've lost, now that they've had a failed attempt to convince voters, what are they doing? They're having the state attorney general, a Democrat, impose this agenda by fiat. Now, apparently he's within his legal rights and his authority to do so, but it's just interesting because the Democrats tried to persuade Virginians this is what ought to be done. Virginians disagreed. They're doing it anyway.
And they didn't want it, and they're still doing it anyway, Megyn. And at the same time, that state attorney general is saying that this is what the state and this is what the people want.
This is all about the Virginia law. They're just saying that people who come from different states and who are abiding by their own laws have to follow Virginia law. And if they pass the Virginia law, they can have a visitor's license. Now, if we want to talk about politics here, let's talk about how the NRA spends $30 million a year lobbying the legislatures in these states. And in the states with the weakest gun laws, you have the most gun violence. And that is brought to you by gun manufacturers who aren't representing NRA members, who aren't representing the people who want safe gun laws in the books. They want to make sure that there are loopholes for felons, convicts, rapists, murderers, illegal immigrants to come and purchase guns, and terrorists. So if the NRA really cared about its members, maybe they should look at their polls rather than gun manufacturers who are making money off of tragedy.
Let's move forward. This Christmas holiday, you're going to be sitting down watching sports, many of us, and while you're watching basketball, you are likely, Guy, to see the National Basketball Association, the NBA, teaming up with Mike Bloomberg's gun control group. It's called Everytown. You were just seeing a glimpse of it there. This is an ad campaign to end gun violence, okay? The New York Times actually publishing today that this is unlike anything we've ever seen before. We've seen professional athletes speak out and have a stance on this, but until now, no major sports league has lent its name and logo to such an effort.
Yeah.
And we are going to see these we're going to see this across all these games this holiday.
No, look, everyone is against gun violence, right? Especially law-abiding gun owners. Everyone in America is against gun violence. So, look, I have no problem with celebrities or athletes or whomever advocating on behalf of causes that they care about. I will point out that there was quite a snit fit on the left when Tim Tebow did something similar in an ad for the Super Bowl a few years ago on a pro-life issue. But, look, they are well within their rights to get out there and make their case. I'm just not sure if these types of pushes are going to actually bring about new changes in terms of gun control laws, because, again, if you look at public opinion, it is shifting away from gun control, A, and B, the NBA has a bit of a gun violence culture to deal with itself. So this might be a bit of a physician heal thyself situation.
No, Miki, you're shaking your head. The ads we're going to feature, we're told, star NBA athletes calling for an end to gun violence. The first 30-second ad is set to run 5 times on Friday, Christmas Day alone. This is going to be a huge focus that they're putting out there on shooting victims. Your take?
Yeah, and a lot of these NBA players come from communities where there's gun violence and have had family members as victims. So I think those messages are very powerful, especially to Americans who do want sensible gun laws. And you know, to go back to Guy's point here, that's absolutely untrue. The polls are saying that gun owners want sensible gun laws. They don't want felons to have access to these guns. They don't want these open loopholes. They don't want the lax gun laws that they have in states where there's more gun violence. So I think, you know, kudos to Everytown. You know, they're only spending $300,000 a year on messaging and lobbying compared to the $30 million a year spent by the gun manufacturers and lobbying Congress. And that's why we're not having any action. You know, nothing's changing because lawmakers are being bought and sold. Every time there's a tragedy, you have the NRA they're going out there putting ads out to buy guns, and they're stomping into their legislators' office to get looser gun laws.
You're
that's the problem. They're not representing their members.
You're ignoring the Constitution and the will of the people.
Legal gun owners fear that their rights are going to be stripped away. It's the illegal gun owners that we are concerned about, and the concern is that new laws
don't follow the law.
That's